I had to kind of almost learn to be sick, which sounds funny, but I had to learn that, okay, things have changed, and to kind of embrace that. But also when I finished treatments, I had to learn to be well again. So that was another journey after. My name's Julie. I'm from Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma 10 years ago when I was 23. And I went through chemo and radiation, and I'm happy to be cancer-free right now, and kind of have learned to use the experience to focus my future on positive things. At that time, I was kind of at an in-between stage anyway. I hadn't quite figured out exactly how I was going to progress in my career plans or school plans, and I was just at that point of deciding whether I should go to grad school or what I was going to do with my life. And so I guess in some ways that was a good time for it to happen, but also it was really hard because at the end, to try to regain normal when normal hadn't even been established yet. So for me, the worst part was the waiting and not knowing what it was, because up to that point I was invincible. There was nothing could happen to me. So it was kind of a reality check that, okay, it can happen, and it did happen, and it caught me off guard. So a lot of where that first time period when I was first diagnosed was kind of coming to grips with you know, my own mortality, I guess, or the fact that I wasn't invincible anymore. It's funny, when I was first diagnosed and they said, you know, you're going to have chemotherapy, you know, I was pretty naive to what that really entailed, and the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I'm going to lose my hair. As opposed to, oh my God, I have cancer, I'm going to die. And I'm not a vain person, and wasn't at the time. The fact that that was the first thought that came to mind was really, really amazing to me. Blew my mind that I would think that. But it was a huge concern. But what I learned from it was, you know, not to be afraid of that. That's not what defines me. I guess before I had even curlier hair before I was diagnosed, and I was always identified by my hair, but suddenly it was about finding a new identity where you strip away everything superficial, and people were really seeing the strength that was coming out of me, and seeing a new side of me. That really taught me a lot about you know, caring so much. What happened with me was I had $9 in my bank account when I was diagnosed, really unfortunate, and I also was without health insurance, which was really, really tricky because I was in between jobs. My job had finished, I was working a contract that had finished. My partner had moved out west for a job, and so I was deciding whether or not I would go with them or whether I would, you know, consider going to school elsewhere. And so I was at this really, really in-between stage, but again, with zero money, well, $9, I shouldn't say zero, $9, and no health insurance. It was, that had a huge impact, because when I was diagnosed and the realization that the chemo is covered by Medicare, but not the anti-nausea drugs and all the extra drugs, and there are a lot, and some of them cost, you know, $25 a pill, or an injection to boost the white blood cells cost, you know, $2,000 every 2 weeks, or that you had to have it. So it was suddenly this huge debt load, and to have zero resources to tap into, that I actually ended up having to go on social assistance. But when you're sick and going through chemo and having to, you know, be the one that's trying to negotiate with the help of social workers in the oncology department, but a lot of it you had to do yourself because they needed to talk to you personally, that was a huge struggle. And luckily I had my mother to fall back on, that she was able to get a loan out, and I had to get loans out, and all my student loans had gone into repayment status, so I had to work on getting interest relief, and there was a lot of financial issues that were really, really challenging. And I was really grateful to be able to depend on my mother, despite the fact that, you know, I was, you know, already living on my own, and it was kind of a shift to have to rely on someone. Some friends just disappeared, and at the time I thought, how could they do that? But now that I'm 10 years past that, I'm been more reflective and a little more forgiving, because they aren't at that point of growth that I've been at, or been through, to be able to handle things face on. I was kind of forced to learn how to do that, but I kind of offered forgiveness in my mind for the people that weren't there, and have opened a door to allow them back into my life, and I don't hold it against them. People handle things in different ways, so that hindsight, again, has lessened the blow, but at the time it was really difficult. Again, especially when you're 23 and all your friends are seemingly out having fun and doing 23-year-old things, and I felt like I wasn't fun anymore. That they didn't want, they didn't want to hang out or do anything. And so I really did appreciate the people that, came by, and even if they were so uncomfortable and they acknowledged that they were uncomfortable, that was better to me than not showing up at all. And it ended up strengthening a lot of relationships, and a lot of people came out of the woodwork that I would never have thought would have been my biggest supporters. The hardest part for me, I would have to say, about having had cancer was at the end of treatment. Because when I was in treatment, it was all about focusing on the physical, like, how do I feel? Am I feeling okay? Okay, I need to get through this. I need to set goals. I need to get through this chemo and then the next one. And, you're counting down. But when I finished treatment, it was like they handed me the rest of my life back and sent me on my way. And again, I was at a time period where nothing had been established yet. I was living with my mother. I had no money, no job, and I really struggled with, what am I going to do with my life that has as much meaning as what I've just been through? Like, I was kind of reeling that it set in what had happened after I'd finished the treatment. So the first thing I did is I bought a soup cookbook, and I every day would make a different kind of soup, and it was a simple task, a mindless task, but it was something. And it was something I learned to do well. Like, I really make good soup now. I'll brag a little bit about that, but it was because it was almost a nourishing my soul as much as it was about doing something physical, so that I had something to get up for that day. Is okay, next page, let's try another soup. And I was really fatigued and tired and didn't feel like myself. I felt like I lost all muscle mass, and I had basically slept for a good 9 months. That's what I felt like anyway. So it was about also nourishing my body. So it was a symbolic thing as well as a practical thing. And it was about just really, really evaluating what it was that I wanted to do with my life. In a sense, having cancer kind of, in one way, in kind of a negative way, made me a little bit afraid of the future. But from that, I've also recognized I am right here in the moment, and from that experience have learned to live every single moment. So whereas going through cancer, and even for the first couple of years, it was really about feeling, oh, my friends, I felt really far behind from my friends, and, a little disconnected and stuff like that, to now, 10 years later, it's a shift that I think for the friends that I can't relate to, it's really they can't relate to me, because I've traveled, I've taken risks, I've tried new things, and I guess use my experience as kind of motivation to really live every moment, because that's what we have, and recognizing that anything bad can happen at any given moment, but so can anything really great. So it's really kind of been what I took away from the whole experience was, this is it right now. So the soup was the beginning of that, and it was the beginning of I'm going to be very present in how do I feel right now, and what makes me happy right now in this moment, and that's what I'm going to focus on, and not worry about, what lies down the road, because anything great can happen.